The emergency klaxons started wailing at 0347 local time, their piercing electronic screams cutting through the artificial night cycle of New Geneva like a plasma cutter through hull plating. Chief Security Officer Rand Corval was 3 sips into his morning synth coffee when the alerts began cascading across his neural interface, each one more urgent than the last. He set down his mug with the practiced calm of a man who'd seen 12 years of frontier warfare and muttered, "Well, there goes my quiet morning." The holographic displays surrounding his command post flickered to life, painting the dimly lit security center in shades of amber and crimson. Incident reports flooded in from the lower districts like a digital avalanche. Unconscious civilians found drained of blood, witnesses babbling about a figure that moved too fast to track, and something about ears that weren't quite right. Rand scrolled through the testimonies with growing amusement at humanity's tendency toward creative exaggeration under stress. "Chief, we've got 17 confirmed incidents in Sector 7 alone," called out Lieutenant Hayes from across the room, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Whatever this thing is, it's moving fast." "Thing?" Rand raised an eyebrow, his weathered face creasing into what passed for a smile. "Hayes, in my experience, when people start calling something a thing, it usually turns out to be disappointingly ordinary. Remember the shadow creature of Proxima Station that terrorized colonists for 3 weeks? That was just a malfunctioning maintenance droid with a faulty stealth field," Hayes admitted reluctantly. "Exactly. Though I'll grant you, this one's got better marketing." Rand's fingers danced across the haptic controls, pulling up surveillance feeds from across the city. The quantum processors of New Geneva's monitoring system could track a dust mote in a sandstorm, yet somehow their mysterious visitor remained frustratingly elusive, appearing only as fleeting shadows and distorted energy signatures. The city spread out below them through the reinforced transparent steel windows of the security tower, its crystalline spires rising like frozen lightning against the purple-black sky of Kepler 442b. Bioluminescent advertisements crawled across building facades, hawking everything from neural enhancement packages to authentic Earth-style pizza. It was beautiful, in the gaudy way that all frontier cities tried too hard to prove they belonged among the stars. "Sir, Major Chen is requesting immediate military support," Hayes reported, her hands flying over her console as more reports streamed in. "She's mobilizing 3 full squads of peacekeepers." Chen always was trigger-happy, Rand mused, watching the tactical displays update in real time. Remember when she wanted to declare martial law because someone was stealing lunches from the commissary refrigerator? That turned out to be Counselor Williams's pet neuroslug. And a very well-fed neuroslug it was. Rand's attention shifted to a new feed showing panicked civilians fleeing through the lower market district. Hover transports packed with families lifted off from emergency platforms, their anti-grav engines whining in protest at the overload. The exodus was impressive in its thoroughness. Apparently, whatever was down there had really gotten people's attention. Then he saw her. The figure moved through the abandoned streets like liquid shadow given form, impossibly graceful despite her obvious haste. The surveillance system's enhanced imaging protocols struggled to maintain focus, but in the brief moments of clarity, Rand caught glimpses of something that made him lean forward in his chair. She appeared human at first glance. 2 arms, 2 legs, the right proportions, but there was something in the way she moved that spoke of controlled power barely held in check. "Hayes, enhance Grid 77 Alpha and run a biological scan." "Already on it, Chief." "Biosignature is weird. Definitely humanoid, but the cellular density readings are off the charts." "And sir?" Hayes paused, her brow furrowed as she studied her displays. "The energy absorption patterns don't match any known species in the colonial database." "Of course they don't. That would make this too easy." Rand stood and stretched, his joints protesting the movement with small pops that reminded him he wasn't 20 anymore. "What's the current tactical situation?" "Peacekeepers are establishing a perimeter around sectors 6 through 9. Major Chen wants to contain the threat until heavy weapons can be brought online." "Heavy weapons?" Rand shook his head with dark amusement. Because nothing says interspecies diplomacy like plasma cannons. Any actual injuries reported? That's the strange part, sir. All the victims are unconscious but alive. Vital signs are stable, just depleted. Like someone drained their batteries but left them plugged in. The comparison was apt, Rand thought, as he watched the tactical display update. Red dots representing peacekeeper positions began forming a rough circle around the affected area, while civilian evacuation routes glowed green as the last stragglers fled to designated safe zones. It was textbook containment protocol, except for one small problem: they had no idea what they were containing. "Chief, Major Chen is requesting your presence at the forward command post," Hayes announced, touching her earpiece. "She wants to coordinate the joint response." "I'm sure she does." Rand collected his sidearm from its charging cradle, checking the power cell out of long habit. The weapon felt reassuring in his hand, though he suspected it would prove about as useful as harsh language if their visitor was half as dangerous as the report suggested. "Tell the Major I'll be along shortly. I want to check something first." "Sir. Just curious about our uninvited guest's movement pattern. Call it professional interest." What Rand didn't say was that something about the whole situation felt wrong. Not dangerous wrong, which he could handle, but puzzle wrong, like trying to solve an equation with half the variables missing. In his experience, truly hostile entities didn't leave their victims alive, and they certainly didn't wander around an armed colony settlement like tourists exploring a gift shop. The security feeds continued their electronic dance across his displays, tracking the chaos spreading through New Geneva's lower levels. But Rand found himself watching the empty spaces between the panic, looking for patterns in the absence of information. Somewhere out there in the neon-washed streets, a mystery with pointed ears was waiting for someone brave enough, or stupid enough, to find answers instead of just pointing weapons. He finished his synth coffee in one bitter gulp and headed for the door. After all, someone had to ask the important questions, like why an apparently bloodthirsty alien was being so considerate about not actually killing anyone. In Rand's experience, the universe's deadliest threats rarely came with such thoughtful customer service. The market district had transformed into something resembling the aftermath of a neutron bomb. All the infrastructure remained intact, but every living soul had vanished. Rand picked his way through overturned stalls where exotic fruits from 6 different star systems lay rotting, their bioluminescent juices creating puddles that glowed like spilled starlight. A vendor's cart of Centauri melons had tipped over, releasing their sweet, cloying scent into the recycled air while their natural phosphorescence painted everything in sickly green light. "Well, this is atmospheric," Rand muttered to himself, stepping carefully around a scattered display of Rigelian crystal flowers that chimed softly in harmonic frequencies as his boots disturbed them. Nothing says alien encounter like a soundtrack of wind chimes and rotting fruit. His neural interface maintained a steady stream of chatter from the peacekeeper units establishing their perimeter 6 blocks out. Major Chen's voice crackled through the comm channel every few minutes, demanding status updates and threatening increasingly creative forms of disciplinary action if Rand didn't report to the command post immediately. He'd learned long ago that the best way to handle Chen's tactical micromanagement was selective hearing loss. The energy readings on his scanner grew stronger as he moved deeper into the abandoned district. Whatever their mysterious visitor was, she radiated bioelectric signatures that made his equipment sing like a choir of caffeinated technicians. The patterns were unlike anything in the colonial database, too complex for a simple life form, too organic for artificial intelligence, and far too interesting for his own good. He found her in Liberation Plaza, standing beneath the towering holographic monument to humanity's expansion among the stars. The memorial displayed a slow-motion cascade of colony ships launching from Earth, their ion drives painting brilliant streaks across the simulated void. It was impressive propaganda, though Rand had always thought the real monument should show the paperwork and bureaucratic nightmares that made interstellar colonization possible. She stood motionless in the monument's pale blue glow, her back to him as she studied the display with apparent fascination. From this distance, she looked remarkably human, average height, slender build, long dark hair that caught the holographic light like spun shadow. The reports about her appearance had been accurate, if not for the distinctly pointed ears that rose above her hair like delicate question marks. She could have passed for any colonial citizen. "You know," Rand called out, his voice echoing off the empty buildings around the plaza, "most tourists take pictures instead of terrifying the locals." She turned with fluid grace, and Rand found himself looking into eyes that seemed to hold depths he couldn't quite fathom. Her face was indeed remarkably human, beautiful in an otherworldly way that made him think of classical sculptures brought to life. The pointed ears gave her an elfin quality that would have been charming under different circumstances, like meeting her at a coffee shop instead of in the middle of a citywide panic. "Pictures," she repeated, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't place. The word seemed to roll around in her mouth like she was tasting it. "You capture light patterns to preserve moments?" "Among other things, yes. Though usually without the mass exodus and emergency protocols." Rand kept his hands visible and away from his weapon, though he noticed she seemed more curious than threatening. "I don't suppose you'd be willing to explain why half the city thinks you're some sort of monster?" Her expression shifted to something that might have been embarrassment, and she gestured vaguely at the abandoned plaza around them. "I may have miscalculated the cultural impact of my feeding requirements." "Feeding requirements?" Rand nodded slowly. "Right. And those would be bioelectric energy. What your species stores in the fluid medium you call blood." She tilted her head, studying him with obvious interest. "You are not fleeing. I'm what you might call professionally curious." "Bad habit of mine." Rand took a careful step closer, noting how her ears seemed to twitch slightly at his movement. "Though I have to ask, if you're going to drain people's blood, wouldn't it be more efficient to, actually kill them? This whole, unconscious but alive thing seems like poor predator technique." She blinked at him, and for a moment looked genuinely confused. "Kill them? Why would I kill them? That would be wasteful and rude." "Rude?" Rand couldn't help but smile. "Well, I appreciate good manners in a potential threat to public safety. Though you might want to work on your public relations. The whole mysterious figure draining blood thing has some unfortunate historical connotations for humans." "I am unfamiliar with your historical connotations." "Vampires. Blood-sucking monsters of the night. Classic human mythology." Rand watched her face carefully as he spoke. "Usually involves a lot more cape-swirling and dramatic monologuing." "I do not own a cape," she said with what sounded like complete seriousness. "And I find monologuing inefficient." "Fair enough. Though you're missing out on the dramatic flair." His scanner beeped softly, and Rand glanced at the readings. Her bioelectric signature was unlike anything he'd ever seen, complex, layered, almost musical in its patterns. "So, if you don't mind me asking, what brings you to our little corner of the galaxy?" The tourism brochures for Kepler 442b are notoriously misleading. "I am." She paused, seeming to search for words. "Between destinations. Your world appeared suitable for temporary resource acquisition." "Resource acquisition?" Rand nodded. "That's a polite way to put it. Though next time you might want to check local customs first. We humans get a bit nervous about unscheduled blood drives. This is noted for future reference." Her ears twitched again, and she glanced toward the perimeter where the peacekeepers waited. "Your companions maintain their distance. They're probably waiting for me to either arrest you or get dramatically murdered. Both would make excellent additions to their incident reports." Rand's calm crackled with another demand from Major Chen, which he ignored with practiced ease. "Though I have to say, you're not quite what I expected from the reports." "What did you expect?" "More fangs, honestly. Maybe some Gothic architecture and ominous weather. The whole blood-draining thing usually comes with better production values." She stared at him for a long moment, and Rand wondered if he'd finally said something that crossed a cultural line. Then her mouth curved into what was unmistakably a smile, and he realized she was trying not to laugh. "You find humor in dangerous situations," she observed. Occupational hazard. 12 years of military service teaches you that the universe has a twisted sense of humor, so you might as well laugh along. Rand gestured at the empty plaza around them. "Besides, if you were really dangerous, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. This assumes I am not simply prolonging your existence for entertainment purposes." "Are you?" "I have not decided yet." Rand grinned. "Well, at least you're honest about it. That's refreshingly direct for first contact protocol." Her expression grew more serious, and she stepped closer. At this distance, he could see that her eyes held flecks of color that seemed to shift in the holographic light, and her skin had a faint luminescence that spoke of biology evolved under different stars. "You speak of first contact," she said. "This suggests you believe I represent something more than a simple predator. Call it an educated guess." Simple predators don't usually engage in philosophical discussions about feeding etiquette. Rand's scanner chimed again, and he noted the energy readings were growing stronger. "Plus, you're clearly intelligent, technologically capable enough for interstellar travel, and polite enough to leave your victims alive. That suggests civilization, not monsters. Your logic is sound." She tilted her head, studying him with renewed interest. "You are not what I expected from the defenders of this settlement." "What did you expect?" "Fear. Hostility. Weapons pointed in my direction." "Well, the day's still young," Rand said cheerfully. "Give Major Chen time to organize her tactical response, and you'll get plenty of weapons pointed your way. She's very thorough about that sort of thing." The alien woman's ears perked up at this, and she glanced again toward the distant peacekeeper positions. "Your military commander intends violence." "She intends tactical solutions to perceived threats. Whether that involves violence depends largely on how cooperative you're feeling." Rand considered their situation, noting how the emergency lighting had begun cycling to amber alert status around the plaza. "Though I should probably mention that standing around in the open having philosophical discussions probably isn't the best survival strategy right now." "You suggest we relocate?" "I suggest we figure out what you actually want before Chen decides to turn this plaza into a crater. She has a very direct approach to problem solving." The woman nodded slowly, her expression growing thoughtful. "Perhaps relocation would be wise. I find myself unexpectedly interested in continuing this conversation." "Excellent. Any preferences for defensible positions with good sight lines and multiple exit routes?" "You speak as one familiar with tactical situations." 12 years of military service," Rand repeated. "Plus, hanging around with Major Chen teaches you to always have an escape plan." For the first time since he'd found her, the alien woman laughed, a sound like crystal bells caught in a gentle wind. "I believe I would enjoy meeting this Major Chen. Trust me, the feeling wouldn't be mutual." The maintenance tunnels beneath New Geneva hummed with the steady rhythm of a city's mechanical heartbeat. Atmospheric processors cycled breathable air through kilometers of ducts, while quantum computers maintained the delicate balance between artificial gravity and structural integrity. Rand had led them through a service entrance hidden behind a defunct noodle stand, its access panel requiring his security clearance and a minor violation of several safety protocols. "This is cozy," Rand remarked as they settled into an alcove between two massive coolant conduits. The space was cramped but defensible, with sight lines down 3 different tunnel branches. Not exactly the scenic route, but the accommodations are authentic frontier-style utilitarian. His companion, who had still not offered her name despite 20 minutes of conversation, perched on a maintenance box with the same fluid grace she'd displayed in the plaza. Her pointed ears twitched occasionally at sounds Rand couldn't detect, and he found himself wondering just how acute her hearing might be. "Your infrastructure is adequate," she said, running her fingers along one of the coolant pipes. "Though your energy distribution patterns could be optimized. I'll be sure to pass that along to the engineering department." They love constructive criticism from mysterious aliens. Rand checked his scanner again, noting that her bioelectric signature seemed less intense in the confined space. Speaking of which, I don't suppose you'd be willing to share your name. Referring to you as the terrifying blood-draining alien woman gets cumbersome after a while. Names carry power among my people. To share one's true name requires. She paused, seeming to search for the right words. Trust. Understanding. Bonds of mutual respect. Ah, the mysterious alien name taboo. Classic first contact situation. Rand grinned. What if I told you my middle name is Bartholomew? Would that count as a gesture of good faith? She stared at him for a moment, then tilted her head in what he was beginning to recognize as her expression of confusion. Bartholomew is an unusual designation. Does it carry significance among your people? Only the significance of having parents with questionable judgment in baby names. Rand's comm unit crackled with another transmission from the surface, which he switched to silent mode. My point is, I'm willing to share embarrassing personal information if it helps build that mutual trust you mentioned. Your willingness to reveal weakness is unexpected. Weakness? Bartholomew isn't weak, it's just unfortunate. There's a difference. A distant rumble echoed through the tunnels, and Rand recognized the sound of hover tanks taking position above them. Sounds like Major Chen is bringing out the heavy equipment. She really doesn't like mysteries. Your military commander appears to favor direct solutions. Chen once tried to solve a diplomatic crisis by challenging the alien ambassador to single combat. Turned out the ambassador's species considered that a formal marriage proposal. Rand shook his head at the memory. Took 3 weeks and a team of xenobiologists to untangle that mess. His companion's ears perked up with obvious interest. Your people have encountered other species? A few. Mostly traders and explorers, nothing too dramatic. Though there was that incident with the crystal-singing gas clouds from Vega 7. They kept trying to harmonize with our communication satellites. Rand noticed how her expression had grown more serious. You sound surprised. Are we not supposed to have met anyone else yet? Most young species remain isolated for several millennia after achieving interstellar travel. Your people seem to have accelerated the usual timeline. We're overachievers that way. Though it's mostly been accidental. Humans have a talent for stumbling into situations we're not prepared for. Another rumble shook the tunnels, closer this time. Case in point, I'm probably not prepared for this conversation, but here we are anyway. You display remarkable adaptability for an unprepared individual. Years of practice. Military service teaches you to roll with whatever the universe throws at you. Rand glanced at his scanner readings, noting energy fluctuations in the tunnels around them. Though I have to ask, when you mention feeding on bioelectric energy, exactly how does that work? Is it something you actively control, or more of an automatic process? She was quiet for a moment, her expression growing thoughtful. It is complex. Your people generate bioelectric fields naturally, the neural activity, cellular processes, life force itself. Most species learn to regulate these emanations, but humans seem unaware of the energy you radiate. So we're basically walking around broadcasting on frequencies we don't know exist. An apt comparison. Your species is remarkably bright on the bioelectric spectrum. It makes you visible from considerable distances. That explains why you found us so easily. Though it raises some interesting questions about human evolution. Rand frowned as his comm unit began flashing emergency signals. Or it would, if we had time for a proper xenobiology discussion. His companion noticed his attention to the comm unit and tilted her head. Your companions grow impatient. Chen's moving her forces into position. She's probably planning something dramatic and poorly thought out. Rand switched his comm back to active mode and immediately regretted it as Chen's voice exploded through the speaker. Corval. Where the hell are you? We've got energy readings throughout the maintenance sector, and if you've gotten yourself killed by some alien monster, I'm going to court-martial your corpse. She seems agitated, his companion observed with what might have been amusement. That's Chen's natural state. She operates on a spectrum from mildly irritated to declaring war on physics itself. Ran activated his comm pickup. Chen, this is Corval. Status report. Status report. Status report. You disappear into alien-infested territory without backup, ignore 17 direct orders to report to the command post, and you want to give me a status report. Well, when you put it like that, it does sound irresponsible. Corval, so help me, if you're not at my position in 10 minutes, I'm sending in a heavy assault team. About that, Chen, I think we might want to reconsider the whole heavy assault approach. Our situation down here is more complex than the initial report suggested. Static filled the comm channel for several seconds before Chen's voice returned, dangerously quiet. Corval, are you telling me you've made contact with the hostile entity? I'm telling you the entity might not be as hostile as we initially assumed. Also, she can hear every word you're saying right now, so you might want to watch the entity references. His companion leaned closer to the comm unit and spoke in her melodic voice. Greetings, Major Chen. I apologize for the disruption to your settlement's routine. The silence that followed was so complete that Ran wondered if Chen had actually passed out from shock. Finally, her voice crackled through the speaker, carefully controlled but with an edge that suggested imminent violence. Corval, you have 30 seconds to explain why you're having a polite conversation with something that's been terrorizing my colonists. Long story short, cultural misunderstanding. She's not actually trying to terrorize anyone, she just needs some bioelectric energy to, well, survive, I think. And before you ask, yes, she leaves her donors alive and apparently unharmed. Donors? Better terminology than the victims, don't you think? More collaborative spirit. Corval. Yes, Major. When I get my hands on you, I'm going to use you for target practice. His companion spoke up again. Major Chen, perhaps we could arrange a more formal meeting. I believe there may be mutual benefits to continued dialogue. Mutual benefits? Chen's voice rose several octaves. Lady, you've put my entire colony into emergency lockdown. What possible mutual benefits could there be? Your people face challenges in this star system that my knowledge could help address. In exchange, I require only modest bioelectric sustenance and temporary sanctuary. Ran raised an eyebrow at this. Challenges in the star system? What kind of challenges? His companion's expression grew serious, and her ears flattened slightly against her head. Your long-range sensors have detected nothing unusual in the outer system. Should they have? Perhaps. Your people may wish to examine the data more carefully. She glanced toward the tunnel ceiling as another rumble shook the maintenance area. Though first, we should address the immediate tactical situation. Your Major Chen appears to be preparing for aggressive action. Chen always prepares for aggressive action. It's her default setting. Rand stood and checked his weapon charge, noting that the power cell was still at full capacity. Any suggestions for convincing a trigger-happy military commander that peaceful coexistence is possible? In my experience, demonstration is more effective than explanation. What kind of demonstration? Before she could answer, the sound of plasma cutters echoed through the tunnels, followed by the metallic clang of access panels being forced open. Chen had apparently decided that 30 seconds was sufficient time for diplomatic solutions. Well, Rand said cheerfully, looks like we're about to find out how good your people's skills really are. The central spire of New Geneva rose 2 kilometers into the purple sky, its crystalline walls designed to withstand everything from seismic events to direct meteor impacts. What the architects hadn't anticipated was Major Chen's decision to treat it as a containment facility, sealing every entrance and exit while pumping the interior full of armed peacekeepers with questionable trigger discipline. I have to admit, Rand said as he and his companion climbed through the building's service ducts, this isn't how I imagine spending my morning. Usually, my biggest worry is whether the commissary has run out of real coffee again. Your coffee substitute is adequate, she replied, moving through the narrow space with impossible grace. Her pointed ears twitched as she monitored sounds from the floors below. Though the flavor profile suggests synthetic origin. Synthetic coffee is one of humanity's greatest crimes against the universe. Right up there with bureaucracy and elevator music. Rand paused at an access panel, checking his scanner for patrol patterns on the next level. Speaking of crimes, I don't suppose you'd like to explain what you meant about challenges in our star system? Because right now I'm more worried about the immediate challenge of not getting shot by my own people. Your long-range sensor array detected gravitational anomalies in the outer system approximately 6 standard months ago, she said, settling beside him in the cramped duct. Your scientists dismissed them as instrument error. Should they have? The anomalies indicate the approach of what your people might call a harvester fleet. They arrive every few millennia to collect resources from developing systems. Rand stopped what he was doing and stared at her. Harvester fleet. That sounds ominous. They are efficient but not unnecessarily destructive. However, they do not typically account for indigenous populations when calculating resource extraction quotas. Meaning your colony represents an unexpected variable that could complicate their operations. They prefer to resolve such complications before beginning extraction. Resolve. Rand considered this. When you say resolve, you mean complete planetary sterilization is their standard protocol for dealing with unanticipated complications. Right. Well, that does put our current situation in perspective. Rand's comm unit buzzed with another transmission from Chen, who was apparently coordinating a floor-by-floor search of the entire spire. So let me get this straight, you're a refugee from this harvester fleet, you need bioelectric energy to survive, and now you're trying to warn us about an incoming alien invasion that could wipe out our entire colony. Your summary is accurate, though I would characterize it as interspecies cooperation rather than warning. My people possess defensive technologies that could protect your world, but we require sanctuary and resources to implement them. And the bioelectric energy? My species evolved to draw sustenance from the life force of other beings. It is not predatory by choice, we require it to maintain our own existence. Her ears drooped slightly. I understand why your people find this disturbing. Honestly, after 12 years of military rations, I'm not in a position to judge anyone's dietary requirements. Rand opened the access panel and peered into the corridor beyond. Though I have to ask, how many of your people are we talking about? My ship carries 47 survivors. We are all that remains of our homeworld. The number hit Rand harder than he'd expected. 47 beings, all that was left of an entire civilization, fleeing across the galaxy in search of safety. It put their current crisis in a very different context. 47, he repeated. From an entire world. The harvesters are thorough. I'm starting to understand why you seemed more curious than hostile when we met. You're not invading, you're asking for help. Your species shows promise. We would prefer to see you survive the coming extraction. Rand's scanner chimed softly, indicating approaching patrol units. He gestured for silence and listened as heavy boots passed by their hiding spot. When the sound faded, he activated his comm unit and switched to Chen's private frequency. Chen, this is Corval. I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Corval, you magnificent bastard, where are you? We've been searching this building for 2 hours. I'm in the service levels with our alien visitor, and we need to talk. All of us. Together. Without weapons pointed at anyone. Are you out of your mind? That thing has put our entire colony at risk. Chen, there's an alien fleet heading for our system. A big one. With really unpleasant intentions regarding planetary sterilization. Our new friend here might be the only chance we have to survive what's coming. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant hum of the building's life support systems. Finally, Chen's voice returned, carefully controlled. Corval, are you being coerced? Blink twice if you're under duress. I'm not blinking, Chen, because this is an audio channel. And no, I'm not being coerced. I'm being practical. Sometimes the universe drops solutions in your lap, and you have to be smart enough to recognize them. Solutions? We don't even know what the problem is yet. The problem is that we're a young species with limited technology living in a galaxy full of things that could erase us without effort. The solution is making allies with people who have better technology and similar survival interests. His companion leaned closer to the comm unit. Major Chen, I propose a demonstration of good faith. If you will allow me access to your long-range sensor data, I can show you the gravitational signatures that indicate the approaching fleet. And why exactly should I trust you with access to our sensor arrays? Because if I wished to harm your people, I would not need access to your technology to do so. Ran grinned at the alien woman's matter-of-fact delivery. Chen, she has a point. If she wanted to cause real damage, she probably wouldn't be hiding in maintenance ducts having philosophical discussions about coffee. Fine, Chen's voice crackled with frustration. But if this goes sideways, Corval, I'm holding you personally responsible for the complete destruction of human civilization. Fair enough. Though in my defense, human civilization was probably doomed anyway. We're not exactly known for our long-term planning skills. 20 minutes later, they stood in Aspire's central command center, surrounded by banks of quantum processors and holographic displays that painted the room in shifting patterns of blue and gold light. Chen had arrived with a full security detail, though she'd grudgingly agreed to keep weapons holstered. The peacekeepers maintained a respectful distance while trying not to stare too obviously at their visitors' pointed ears. These are your sensor readings from the past 8 months, Chen said, gesturing at a three-dimensional display of local space. I don't see anything that looks like a fleet. Your instruments are calibrated for conventional matter, the alien woman replied, moving to the control panel with fluid grace. May I? Chen nodded reluctantly, and their visitor began manipulating the display controls with surprising familiarity. The star chart shifted, filtering through different spectrums and gravitational wavelengths until new objects appeared at the edge of the system. There, she said, pointing to a cluster of distortions moving in perfect formation toward Kepler 442b. 37 vessels, each approximately 5 kilometers in length. Estimated arrival in 43 standard days. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Chen stared at the display, her face cycling through a range of expressions before settling on grim determination. 37 ships, she said finally. Each 5 kilometers long. The harvesters favor efficiency over elegance. Right. Chen turned to Ran with an expression he recognized from their worst days during the Outer Rim conflicts. Corval, I don't suppose your new friend has any suggestions for how a single human colony might survive contact with 37 alien warships? Actually, Ran said, looking at his companion, I think she might. The alien woman nodded slowly. My people's ship carries defensive technologies that could shield your world from harvester operations. However, implementation would require cooperation between our species and access to your colony's industrial resources. What kind of cooperation? Technical knowledge exchange, resource sharing, and... She paused, glancing at Ran with what might have been embarrassment. Continued access to bioelectric energy for my people's survival. Chen looked from the alien woman to Ran to the display showing the approaching fleet. So our options are, accept help from 47 alien refugees who need to occasionally drain our blood, or get completely obliterated by 37 alien warships in 6 weeks. That's a surprisingly accurate summary, Ran said cheerfully. Though I'd like to point out that the blood-draining thing is apparently non-fatal and probably less unpleasant than whatever the Harvester fleet has in mind. This is insane, Chen muttered, but Ran could see her already shifting into tactical planning mode. We be trusting our entire civilization to people we just met. Chen, we've been trusting our civilization to politicians and bureaucrats for centuries. At least these people have better technology and honest dietary requirements. His companion stepped forward, her expression serious but hopeful. Major Chen, I offer you the survival of your people and the preservation of your world. In exchange, I ask only for sanctuary and the chance to rebuild what was lost when the harvesters destroyed our home. Chen stared at her for a long moment, then looked at the tactical display showing the approaching fleet. When she turned back, her expression had resolved into the kind of determination that had made her a legend during the frontier wars. What do you need from us? First, a formal agreement between our peoples. Then, access to your manufacturing facilities and raw materials. Finally. She glanced at Ran with something that might have been affection. I believe your chief security officer would make an excellent liaison between our species. He has demonstrated remarkable adaptability in unusual circumstances. Ran felt something shift inside him as he looked between Chen's tactical determination and the alien woman's hopeful expression. 12 years of military service had taught him to recognize pivotal moments, and this felt like one of them. Not just for New Geneva or even humanity, but for his own understanding of what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of wonders and terrors. Well, he said, grinning at both of them, I always wanted a job with more variety than checking security reports and drinking synthetic coffee. Though I should probably warn you both, I still don't know your name. The alien woman smiled, and for the first time since their meeting, her expression held no trace of sadness or uncertainty. My name is Velian Shray-Th. And I believe this partnership will be quite interesting. As the first son of Kepler 442b began to rise through the transparent steel dome above them, painting the command center in shades of gold and amber, Ran found himself looking forward to a future that was more complex, more dangerous, and infinitely more hopeful than anything he could have imagined when his morning began with synthetic coffee and routine security reports. The universe, as always, had proven to be full of surprises. This time, at least, they seemed to be good ones.